Oh, hi. I've recently been asked to talk a little bit about how I use the beautiful Piper's silk, which is the thread that I use more than any other in my signature embroideries. Um, Piper's is a company which has been going for a very long time. They produce various types of silk, but the silk which I use is their 90 denier floss. Their website is very easy to find. It's just www.pipers-silk.com. You'll find a link to that on this video page. But as I say, the one that I use of all their many types is the 90 denier floss, which comes in a glorious range of colours. This is part of my set of colours which I use all the time. I have more as well as that, but that's my sort of basic palette of colours. And as I say, you'll find many more shades on their website. Now, people have asked me to, as I say a little bit about how I use them. Not so much the actual stitches themselves. You can find reference to my stitches in various of my videos and of course on my books and my ebook. But actually how to use this very fine, beautiful silk for flat work embroidery, or at least I should say for my type of embroidery, because of course it can be used in many different ways. The 90 denier silk is very fine. Those of you, of course, who have bought stockings and tights will know that the higher the denier number, the finer the silk. 15 denier stockings are finer than 10 denier stockings. And you can see how fine the individual strands of silk are if I just manage to show you how fine that is. So unless you're working extremely fine details, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment, I recommend that you use several strands of this Piper's silk together to make up a gauge of thread approximately equal to a single strand of good old anchor stranded cotton or DMC stranded cotton, which we're all, of course, very familiar with. Now, 3 strands of the Piper 90 denier roughly equates to 1 strand of stranded cotton. And one of the many grand things about this particular thread is that it's extremely forgiving. It's doesn't have a nap in any particular direction, and so you can, in fact, instead of having to cut 3 different strands and put them together, you can in fact go 1, 2, 3. I don't know if you can even just about see this because it's so fine, and then separate it out, treble it up, draw it out so that you've got 3 strands lying together, and then simply thread it into your needle, so that now we have a strand there which is round about the gauge of a single strand of stranded cotton. I'm a lazy stitcher. I do a waist knot at the end of my thread, and then I hide it somewhere on my embroidery so you're not going to see it, so that I'm just ready to stitch. So really, that's the basics of how I use the thread, triple like that for the main elements of your stitching. So when I say the main elements, I mean the infill part of your stitching. So on the flower here, on the leaf, for the main elements. Now, the joy of working in this very fine silk is that, in the opposite way to, say, Japanese silk, which you have to split down into a finer thread, here it's already a finer thread. So if I want to create a more delicate line in my stitching, I just use either 2 strands together or 1 strand, and that will give me enough leeway to work the very fine details. So if we look at a larger study like this, you can see that I've used the 3 strands together again in the main infill sections, and then when I'm using it for a fine stem, such as here on the honeysuckle stems, I can come down to using just 2 strands. And when I want something really, really fine, such as the filaments coming out of the honeysuckle flowers here, I can come down to using just 1 strand to get that very, very fine effect. And again, as I've said, I'm really quite a lazy stitcher. I like to make life for myself as simple as possible, and it's so much easier than having a single thread which you have to split down for the fine elements. You have your fine thread straight away, and you just triple it up to get a finer infill. Now, as I said, it's a very, very versatile thread. You can use it for this type of fine flatwork embroidery. And one of the great joys of it is, as with this little piece again, you can see that it's the non-twist on the silk, the floss of the silk, which gives it this wonderful sheen, so that as the light catches it differently, you can actually see the colour changing. That colour isn't just changing because it's slightly more in shade or in shadow. It's actually changing because the light is catching it differently. So if I keep it on the same angle but move it forward and backward that way, again you can see how that light is playing around the open trumpet of the flower and giving us so many different shades just with that one method of stitching. And the longer you can make your stitches, keeping them of course accurate, but the longer you can take your stitches, the more that play of light on those beautiful silk filaments will come into action for you. So if we look at a piece like this, those big orchid petals, now see how as I change the angle of the light catching those, how the colours play and change. So don't be afraid to take nice long stitches. The longer and the smoother you can actually get those stitches, the better. But a little tip here, if you are going to take those long stitches, make sure that your fabric is tight in your embroidery hoop. Tambour hoops aren't called tambour just for fun. They actually should be tight, like little tambourines, like little drums. And if you do work them, those long stitches, as I have here, actually this is in a twisted thread, but the same principle applies. Those long stitches on your tight, taut background, they will lie flat and smooth, and you can achieve all kinds of different results. Now, interestingly, that beautiful sheen and shine works Also, when the stitches are broken up, this is the wonder of silk, especially the wonder of floss silk. And if I show you this piece of embroidery, which I've actually worked in a very ancient technique, if you can draw your eyes away from the gold thread, which I know is very tempting, and look at the blue silk work, this is actually worked in the Anglo-Saxon technique of split stitch. It's a stitch that was used widely in Opus Anglicanum, simply English work, before the conquest. And if I move that in the light again, you can see how that fabulous sheen and shine is still captured, although we're working in a split stitch, which of course by definition means that you've got very short stitches, each of which split its own predecessor. So your stitches are split up, but you still finish up with this beautiful sheen, slightly different effect to using your very long stitches, which we were using, say, in the floral subjects. So there we are, Piper's silk, very beautiful, very, very versatile. And the way to use it basically is just to play to its strengths, use it trebled up to give you a control, if you like, that thicker strand, then 2 strands for something finer, down to 1 for the very, very fine. And then if you really want to go down to the finest thread of all, you can in fact use what they call a 220 twist. Now, I'm hoping you're actually going to be able to see this. If I put it against a pale background, you might be able to see it a little bit better. But there is the, can you see that? That is the 220 twist, which is an even finer strand. Very worth getting that in black and white, if in nothing else, simply because if you're working subjects like little beasties, little mice, small creatures that have whiskers, your 220 is perfect for capturing that sort of detail. In fact, if when you get in touch with Pipers you can't quite remember what I've called that, but it is the 220 twist, if you say to them, "Can I have some of Helen's whisker thread?" they will know exactly what you mean. Well, I hope you found this useful. It's been lovely to speak to you like this. I shall do so again. And if you have any queries, please do get in touch. Pop them down at the comments at the bottom of this page. Please like and subscribe to my channel and click on the little bell, which means that you'll be notified every time I post a new video. So thanks very much for joining me here in the True Embroidery Studio, and I shall hope to see you again very, very soon. Bye for now.